Hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Social Z Franchise Happy Hour. I'm the host, Calvin Smith, again here in beautiful Destin, Florida. It's my favorite time in Destin right now. It's probably 73 degrees out, but the water's still warm, so I'm looking forward to this weekend. But before I get to the beach, I'm very excited to spend a good 20, 30 minutes here talking to another serial entrepreneur, Daniel Wainwright, coming all the way from Asheville, North Carolina. Daniel, how are you?
I am awesome. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great. Thanks so much for joining us, Daniel. I'm excited to get to talk to you and hear your story and learn more about your entrepreneurial journey. But before we dive into that, you want to take 60 to 120 seconds just to introduce yourself, talk about all the different businesses you have, and anything else that you feel will help frame the rest of this conversation.
Yeah, sure. I don't think it'll take anywhere near 60 seconds, but I'll give it a go. From the UK, I went to university in England. When I finished university, I came to the States to play soccer, signed for a team in Louisiana, of all places. So I was coaching and playing. Met my wife. She's from Lake Charles, Louisiana. And we lived there for 11 years. We've had our marketing and advertising business for 10 years. And from there, I've just branched off. And as the entrepreneurial bug has bitten me over the years, I've started various things. So I have ownership in a janitorial business. And then everything from there has been franchised. So I have an advertising business that's franchised. It's a magazine. I have a 5-star bath solutions. I have two locations, 2 units, bathroom remodeling, and then I just purchased my first Fastest Labs franchise, which is a non-medical drug and alcohol testing franchise. So we're going to open that first of the year. And that's me.
Okay, perfect, awesome. Well, thanks, Daniel. So, what I want to start with, if we can, is the journey from going to be from a professional, we call it soccer, I'm sure you call it football player, to being now a serial entrepreneur. What was that like? How did you end up in Louisiana to play professional sports? That's quite the journey.
Yep.
There, and then how did you end up getting to be a business owner?
Yeah, well, so I was during the summers of when I was at university. During the summer, I'd travel over to the States with a British exhibition soccer company, and we were based in Philadelphia, and we traveled all over the Northeast playing and coaching. We'd coach during the week, and then we'd play an exhibition game on the weekend, and we'd go from town to town. And 2 of us that were on that for 2 summers just got picked up by a team in Louisiana. It's called the PDL back then, kind of a semi-pro setup. And I met my wife, and the rest is history, as they say. So yeah, did the whole fiance visa thing, and green card, and now I'm a citizen many years later. But that was 20 years ago. So when I finished my playing days, I took a sales job because I didn't really know any better, didn't know what else to do, and it was in my blood. My dad was a salesman selling photocopiers with Canon for 30 plus years, and over in the UK, so it was in my blood. And then I always wanted to be a business owner. So my wife is a graphic designer, so we started an advertising business. So we provide marketing services. We have clients all over the place. I bought a Valpak franchise early on, the blue envelope that most people will know.
Oh yeah.
I ran that for a couple of years in small town Louisiana, and it didn't go very well, to be honest with you. It was too small of a town, and really just not the right kind of media for that town. It's a very transactional media, and it just I never got my legs under me. I was younger, and I didn't really know too much. So that was my first real failure. But I did pivot, and it did lead into other things. And then over time, as the marketing business, the advertising business did well, I was able to use that cash flow to purchase other things and do other things. And here we are today.
Sure. So obvious advertising, you started that with your wife, and were you doing that, or were you the sales guy and she was kind of the back end talent, or
Mhm.
how did you guys form that company, and what made you decide to jump in and do that together? Obviously, you were you know learning, I guess, as you go, but what was the conversation like to say, hey, this is the right thing for us to do, and let's do it together?
Yeah, no, good question. I was in sales and loving sales, just hating being employed. I'm just like all of us, just psychologically unemployable, to be honest with you, and just tired of
Sure.
tired of dealing with all of that. And um, I knew my wife had a certain skill set on the graphic design side, website building, all of that good stuff, and I knew it was in demand. And I just started having some conversations with people, along the lines of, "Hey, if my wife and I branch out and do this, is this something you can utilize?" And it was always yes. And yeah, we were a two-man
Sure.
operation for a long time. I was out beating the streets, literally knocking on
Yep.
doors. Um, I built that business literally walking into businesses with business cards and handshakes. And yeah,
Sure.
I brought in the business. She did the work, and it grew. And yeah, it wasn't a joint discussion, my wife and I doing that. It was just a, hey, this is what we're doing, and she's like that. She's very much in the wings, and she was all about it. So we did, and it went really well. And still is
Yeah.
still 10 years later is a good solid little company. And yeah, just kind of branched out from there.
Sure. Sure. Daniel, you mentioned, that you're unemployable, right? And so what was the transition there from going and working these jobs, which, you were probably, at least in the early days, making more money being an employee than an entrepreneur, right? What was the shift of, for you personally, of going and doing it on your own, and what were the things that you learned that you were really good at, and what were the things that you really struggled with as an entrepreneur early on?
Yeah, I hate to say this and I guess it's what everybody does, but it's not very honourable. I spent the last 6 months of my last job mostly selling for my new business and not really
Sure.
selling for the poor guy that was employing me and paying me. And um, I made him a lot
Yep.
of money over the course of a couple of years, and even in that last 6 months, was still making him money. But suffice to say, I was spending most of my time selling my thing,
Sure.
and that was really it. I was just
Yep.
just spending a part of every day talking to people and drumming up business. And I've always been really good at starting a conversation, building a relationship, getting people to trust me. I think pretty good at. Um, what I
Hmm.
struggled with early on was just the financial side of things. The organization of
Sure.
cash flow. Running the books. I've always been a
Hmm.
bank account um, business owner, bank account accountant. I've never been a very fiscally
Yep.
sound entrepreneur until these last few years. So I struggled with that, and that was a good
Hmm.
good part of the reason why that the Valpak franchise didn't succeed, was because I could never really get ahead. I was always collecting money from a client to go ahead and pay the bills, and I could just never really get ahead. You know,
Yep.
just young entrepreneurial stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Well, obviously, with that, Daniel, you've figured it out and done well enough now to own multiple businesses. When you identified that weakness, what was the change through the years that said, "Hey, I've got to really dive in and focus and fix this about myself"? And what was your process to become better at that? Because we all have that struggle, I feel like.
Yeah, I think there's a watershed for everybody as you're running businesses where you suddenly realize I can't do everything. I need help. I cannot do everything in this business, because I was that busy selling and fulfilling and keeping people happy and communicating with clients, that all of the back end, the back office stuff was getting left behind. And I knew that I had to get that handled.
Sure.
And part of me back then thought, well, I should get the back office hired for and get that and me continue selling. But that didn't work for me. The pivotal moment was when I realized if I can replicate myself on the sales side and get somebody, and now it's a team of people selling effectively, and then the
Mhm.
revenue continues, the money's coming in, then I can spend time organizing the business and putting people in place to help me run the business. But I just never had. I could only sell to my
Sure.
capacity, and that meant I could only just make enough money to pay
Yep.
myself and pay my bills. I could never duplicate myself or duplicate those sales numbers and those revenue streams and get the revenue high enough to build a proper business. I think that was the big realization for me.
Sure. Yeah, that's good insight. I think a lot of us, especially in those days when we realize our weakness, we want to hire for that weakness, right? And just because we don't want to deal with it, I'm not good at bookkeeping or organizing the office. I want to hire someone to do that. But it sounds like your decision to say, hey, I am good at sales. I can teach people this, and this is how I scale my business. That's probably what allowed you to take the next step and
Yeah,
go
it was.
forward.
It was
So you
because I
hired
did.
the salespeople. Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to say
Sorry. Go
because
ahead.
I did hire an office manager. I did hire somebody to run the office, run the books, but I struggled to pay her. I was trying to pay myself, trying to pay my wife, trying to
Yeah.
pay this individual, trying to
Sure.
pay the bills, and I was trying to do all of that off of just my sales ability. I wasn't, and in fact, as I was onboarding that
Right.
person and training that person, it was taking time away from selling. So there were periods of time where I was selling less,
Hmm.
and it just becomes a very
Right.
cash flow fatigue is real. You start to get a point where it's
Yeah.
this is not working. I can't do this. And the epiphany was I need to find a way to double sales and do it effectively, and that should solve everything else. And I did. I focused on that, and it did. That was the thing. That was the magic bullet.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Awesome. And so you and your wife obviously still have obvious advertising, but what it looks like it was 7 years into it, you decided, okay, now's the time to go and start some other businesses. What was that conversation like with you and your wife, and what were the things that you saw in your advertising business where you felt comfortable making that leap?
I was never comfortable. I was antsy. I was uncomfortable with the
Sure.
reality of
Sure.
owning a single business. I've never been comfortable.
Hmm.
Um, I don't ever want. I hope I never am comfortable. Um, and there was no. Unfortunately,
Sure.
this sounds awful. I'm not a chauvinist. I promise. I no. I just the first one was the janitorial business. Uh, a buddy and I. There was an attorney that
Mm.
started a janitorial business. He moved out of town, and a buddy and I just stepped in and picked it up. And that business has grown. That's been
Okay.
3 or 4 years. Um, but no, it was just an opportunity presented itself. I was ready for something else. I was ready to add another business. I had no reason.
Sure.
There was no rhyme or reason behind it. It was just something that felt right, and I knew that was the next step. Um, and yeah, I just came home one day and
Sure.
told the missus I bought another business, and she was all right. She was okay with it.
Sure. There you go. Yeah. So what was that like, Daniel? So obviously you and your wife started your advertising business from day zero. What were the things that were different about buying an existing business? Because that's something a lot of us haven't experienced. And what were the positives and negatives of doing that?
Yeah. So I bought it in partnership with somebody else, which I'd never done before. So I own it 50-50 with another guy. And that has its pros and its cons. Obviously, everybody
Sure.
knows about partnerships and how those go. We are good at very different things, and we knew that going in. So that was always very clear. I'm the sales guy. I acquire and onboard new clients and do all of that kind of thing. And he and his wife are very. He was the CFO at that time of a company, and very much on the. And that's been great for me because I don't touch the books in that business. I don't know anything about the the
Sure.
money and the management and the personnel side of things, and I love that. And we have management in place. That business is down in Louisiana. Um, we have management in place that's been in
Sure.
place since we bought the business, and I'm very, very grateful. That's one of those businesses that I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's kind of too good to be true. I've got to knock on wood. It's going really well, and it's
Sure.
been going really well, and God, I hope it continues to go really well. But yeah,
Sure.
it was different in that it was a partnership, so I had some learning to do there, but it was good because I got to focus on what I'm good at. It was B2B, so that was something I'd always been familiar with. I'd always been in B2B, so
Right.
and commercial cleaning and advertising are not that different, which is crazy to say. You are providing a service that the customer needs
Yeah.
and can't do without. They don't, in both cases, don't want to pay for it. They don't want it. They just can't not have it. And you've just got to provide them with
Right.
a better service than they could get anywhere else, and just love on them and do all the good things that you need to do. And they're very similar businesses. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now
Absolutely.
the franchise
Absolutely.
that I bought
So you mentioned.
is very different. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. Go ahead, Daniel. Yeah. So how did you transfer from owning your own business, then you bought an existing business with a partnership, and now you own multiple franchises as well? So what made you go into the franchise route?
Yeah. So when I did the Valpak franchise, I fell in love with the franchise system and the idea of owning a franchise. It's really my cup of tea. I really like the idea of having a business in a box, a model, a process that I can follow. I'm very much one to be told what to do and how to do it, and then I just go and execute on that. I don't like to figure things out. I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I like to do as I'm told and just do a lot of it. So I'd always loved that about the Valpak franchise. It was just that particular product didn't work in the market that I was in at that time. So when I knew that I wanted to go to the next level business-wise, I knew that I was going to have to put myself back in a franchise system. So it was just a case of looking for the best one for me at that time. Knowing what I knew about the previous one that I'd owned, I knew that I just needed to look for the right one, and it would take care of itself.
Sure. And did you buy N2, or did you buy the 5-Star Bath first?
So N2 Publishing is a franchise that I bought in the middle of all the other stuff. It's just a small neighborhood magazine. It's a publication. They sell it as a franchise now. It wasn't back in the day, but that's just a part of our advertising business. It's just another revenue stream that we added after a certain amount of time. But it's not a big business or a big part of what we're doing it, but it is a franchise. So yeah, I forgot about that. That's just something we did along the way.
Sure. Yeah. And so you have the 5-Star Bath one as well, and then you mentioned that you recently bought the Fastest Lab. So what made you decide on those brands? Because it sounds like they're a little bit different than the customer base and the other things that you're used to. And what got you excited about those, and how's that journey been with those brands?
Yeah, so 5-Star Bath was first, and I bought the Asheville territory, and then soon after that I bought Greenville, South Carolina. And that's been amazing. We got off to a really, really fast start, put together a really good team. What I really liked about that model, that particular system, is how turnkey it is from a sales and marketing perspective. You basically just pay your money, pay for advertising. You put money into an advertising budget, a lot of money, because it is, B2C, in-home services. So you're just buying leads. The leads go to the call center. The call center set appointments on our calendar. I have an appointment confirmer that confirms the appointment, qualifies the lead, and then issues it to a salesperson. The salesperson goes out and sees the appointment, sells it or doesn't sell it. If they sell it, it's turned over to our operations team, and they go ahead and fulfill that and install the bathroom. So what I really liked about that business is how turnkey it is, and how it really is, as an owner operator, I don't need to get involved in the business at all. And I knew that from day one. I could just work on the business, grow the business, scale the business, and not get involved. And in fact, if I'm getting involved, that's only going to slow things down. So I love that. Fastest Labs is the same
Sure.
scenario. It's B2B again, which I'm comfortable with. But again, they have a really good system around Zoom info, lead generation, B2B, networking, and growing a customer base for the employee. Most of it is employee drug testing, drug screening. But again, they've just got a really good turnkey system for scaling, for sales. I'm like one of those little cars you had when you were a little kid. You just, with the elastic inside, you pull it back and let it go. That's me. That's all I am.
Yeah.
I'm just an individual that you can point in the right direction. Pull me back a little bit, give me a little bit of juice, and I'm gone. And that's why franchises are so good for me, because I don't have to think. I just do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Daniel, with obviously now with multiple brands and a couple of franchises that, you've mentioned the systems that they've had and why you like them a few times. Have you been able to take anything from the multiple businesses and use that to improve your other operations, whether it's your advertising business or your janitorial services? And have you seen a benefit of having multiple brands that are a little bit different to improve upon one another?
That's a really good question. Something I've never even really thought about. How much of a machine the 5-Star Bath Solutions sales model is really gives a lot of solidity to the way that then I market and advertise my other businesses, because it just gives you confidence to know. And this is the same. I don't care what business you're in. 1 + 1 = 2, or, I don't know how to phrase it necessarily, but in sales and marketing, as soon as you know your key numbers, as soon as you know your metrics, as soon as you know what works, then it's just a case of do more of that. Early on, when I was running my own businesses, I started obvious advertising from scratch. The janitorial business we bought, but there's no game plan, there's no roadmap. You're always trying to figure out what's the best way to generate leads, what's the best way to market this business, what's the best way to get customers. And when you do have something that works and you hit on something that, oh, this is kind of working, you don't necessarily trust it. You don't believe yourself. You don't give what you're doing credibility.
Sure.
But with the franchise, because there's dozens of franchisees around the country all doing the same thing and all getting the same result, it gives it all. And that's for me the number one reason why somebody should buy a franchise. It's for massive validation of the way to do things. So now when I do something in one of my other businesses and I get a good result, then I'll go ahead and test it again, maybe scale it up a little bit, put a little bit more money to it. But as soon as I start to see some trends, I can believe in it, because I've got the confidence of, multiple businesses, and the things that we're doing. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Sure. Then, yeah, absolutely. Daniel, what are you working on right now personally to help you become a better, serial entrepreneur, multiple business owner? What are you doing for self-improvement now that you're at a stage where you're not in the businesses anymore? You really are working on the different aspects and growing it. What do you spend your personal development time on?
Yeah, I've always been, since day one, just a massive consumer of everything, whether it be books, obviously, like the last few years, podcasts, YouTube videos. So more of that, but being the beautiful thing is these things develop. There are more podcasts out there, more YouTube channels, more of everything. You get to narrow your focus. So, obviously I've always been a massive consumer of all of that kind of media, but recently I've been able to really narrow my focus to anything related to franchise ownership, multi-unit, multi-brand ownership. Obviously, just like we all are at this stage, looking into, you know, acquiring businesses, private equity, building a holding company, building a fund, all of those things that you do at this stage. So it's just an evolution of the content that I'm consuming. But that's been the biggest thing. The secret to my success, like most people's, has just been consuming knowledge, never, ever, ever, never being done. If you're green, you grow, and you ripe, you rot, is a good saying that I heard years ago.
That's good.
Just always staying green.
Yep.
So yeah, that's been the big thing.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Then Daniel, with you mentioned content, what are the 2 or 3 podcasts, books, programs? What are the 2 or 3 things that you are getting your most attention right now?
I am liking a few smaller ones that don't really have a lot of traction, but there's one called Owned and Operated, a podcast that's specifically around holding companies and acquisitions. But then some more of the general things. I mean, I like things like My First Million, which is a podcast and a YouTube channel. I like anything where I like listening to people that are doing big things. I like listening to inspiring people that are pushing the envelope, and all knowledge is equal. It's all has its place, but I like to get fired up. I like listening to and watching things that get me jazzed. I want to, and I do it a lot. I'll cut the podcast off halfway through, and I'll get on the phone and try and do something about it, try and execute. I'll be 10 minutes in, and I'll be like, I'm done with that. Let's go. That's a great idea. I'm doing that right now. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Daniel, last question for you as we wrap up 2022 and go into 2023. What's the biggest go or maybe 1 or 2 goals that you're working on right now that have you excited and that have you motivated?
So the new franchise, the Fastest Labs franchise, I'm excited about because it is location based. I've never owned a business that is location based. So, leasing space, operating out of a space. I've never done that before. And I see the opportunity with this to really go multi-unit, 5, 10 more, hopefully, over the next, 3, 5, 10 years. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about really being able to scale something. That's been a big part of my evolution, is frustration with my inability to scale something. And it's always been 50% the opportunities that I've been in and 50% me. I've been the bottleneck a lot of times. And the advertising business, although we have clients all over the place, we were very much a local marketing and advertising firm, and I never felt like I could apply either dollars or effort to scale that business quickly. So I got bored of it and moved on to something else. Still own the business. It's a great business. Same with the janitorial company. It's a local business. You can't scale beyond the borders of the town. Even the 5-star bath business, I own a big territory, and I can continue to grow that. And I will continue to grow that. We did 1.7 million in sales our first year. We'll do between 2 and 3 next year. So I'm growing that thing, and that's exciting. But with the Fastest Labs, I feel like I can go really quick. I really feel like there's no bottleneck in the opportunity, and I feel like I'm ready. I'm ready. Let's go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Daniel, thanks so much for your time, and we appreciate you taking 30 minutes here to share your story and talk a little bit about your journey. It's not every day we get to have a conversation with a professional footballer from the UK that moved to Louisiana and has opened 5 businesses in 10 years. So excited to hear about it. And what we'd ask is if you have time this time next year, we'd love to hear how Fastest Labs are going and hear more about what you're working on. But thanks so much for joining us. And to anyone who's taken the time to listen to me and Daniel, we appreciate you. Hope you join us next time.